Hey, hello friends. Long time no see, as we say here in America for some crazy reason. Whew, good to be back. Well, my name's Dan. This is Daily Art Adventure. Well, not so daily in the last couple weeks. Daily Art Adventure. Oh, my clapper's broken. Daily Art Adventure. Hey, I'm gonna order a new one of these, I promise. Daily Art Adventure number 917. I almost said 200. Boy, that goes back a ways. Well, welcome. I have been thoroughly missing kind of a perfect storm of circumstances. Nothing bad, just funny stuff. I worked nearly 2 weeks on a on-location mural on a wall. That's what a mural is, right? On a wall. I did a mural in a business, and the business was not comfortable with me broadcasting from inside their building. So that took me out for nearly 2 weeks. But then last week, it was just one thing after another after another. I did some painting, and if you follow if you're subscribed to my channel, and if you hit the bell, then you've seen the still images that I put up of finished paintings. Anyway, it's good to be back with you here live. Hello, Uncle. Oh my goodness. Uncle, I didn't even know about people carrying machine guns during the protest. I thought about painting the riots, honestly. Welcome, good to hear from you. Glad you're here. So, I actually started this in a broadcast a couple weeks ago. Here's my photograph, laminated again, and there's my painting so far. I worked on the bride's face a little bit yesterday, then came back today. Let me explain first of all what I was just doing when the broadcast started. I do like this practice. If you have the opportunity to paint into dry. So again, I use liquid, so everything I did yesterday is dry. It really is a lot easier to achieve a high degree of finish or realism if you don't paint alla prima, if you paint dry, into dry. And one of the things I like to do is try to match the color pretty much as closely as you can, using the paint on the plastic technique one day, then let it dry, come back the next day and do glazes on top of that. So I just finished a minute ago doing a little bit of oxide red, orange, some kind of orange, and Scarlet Lake. Very, very, very faint, thin, but just warmed it up, and she looks so much better already. Now I'm going to come in here and with a clean bit of a rag and just lift out on the brightest highlights, and then maybe I won't have to repaint the highlights. Yeah, good enough. All right, now when I came back and looked at her this morning with fresh eyes, I went, ooh, this cheek doesn't look right. So let me show you a quick little cheat that I did with my backup phone. I took a picture, let me zoom back in here, took a picture of my painting, right? And then in the photo edit function of my camera, which I'm assuming all of your cameras have the same function, I flopped the image. So now I'm looking at a mirror image, and that helps me instantly to see, oh yeah, it is, and I saw this, but I just wanted to confirm it. So her cheek over here is too skinny, so I need to widen it. So let's go back to the painting, and this is fairly finicky changes, I would say. Not extreme finicky, whatever finicky means. And, But and I have actually a maul stick here. Oh, let me show you something else. On the back side of this image is a larger image of their faces, the bride and groom. And so I'm going to tape that up right here. It's not exactly the same size as come. It's not exactly the same size as the painting. If I feel the need to add that further, technical trick to my repertoire to achieve a likeness, I will indeed. I will certainly do that. But at the moment, I'm thinking, nah. I'm very close to a likeness. And when I was finishing up yesterday, I also noticed that one of her eyebrows somewhere. Oh, underneath her eye. I've got the bag under her eye is considerably too dark. All right, so what I have to do here now, forgive me if I'm running away. Can you see if I'm here? I think you can. All right. And look at how my death control grip, as I call it. Horrible way to paint. I admit it. Unless it has to be done. All right, that's all. Now, one other thing, again, another tiny detail, her tongue, I've made it a little bit narrower than the photograph. And frankly, I like it slightly narrower than the photograph, but not quite as narrow as I made it. Does that make sense? All right, now, here's the cool, hide your kids, because this kind of thing, old people looking stupid really irritates, and now I know my head's in your way. I'm wearing 2 pairs of glasses. The second pair is a fairly high-powered pair of reading glasses. And forgive me, I know I'm in your way. So it's like pretty much like wearing magnifying glasses. Okay, getting close. Now let me repeat something that I said at the beginning of this broadcast. One of the tricks, so to speak, in portraiture that is a favorite of mine that I don't think I've ever heard anybody else teach, although I'm sure they do, I just missed it, is finishing the portrait with transparent glazes. In fact, I went through a period, maybe 7 to 10 years ago, 5 to 10 years ago, where I taught a technique for portrait painting, for flesh tones. I had 6 different techniques for achieving flesh tones. Maybe I'll review it sometime. I'll do it for you guys probably. But all 6 of them entailed transparent layers or transparent glaze. All right, the bag under this eye is too dark. We do not want to exaggerate the crease under the eye, for looking for a flattering painting. There are some things you can exaggerate with impunity, if you will, and other things that you most certainly cannot. So crease under the eye is not something you want to exaggerate. By the way, I don't talk very often about these brushes, although I could, I should. This is let me see how close I can get you here. Can you, hang on just a minute. Silver brush, hang on, Grand Prix, anyway. There, do you see that? Am I in focus? Anyway, these are, as far as I know, these are, and I'm not an expert, I don't know everything. I know rosemary brushes are wonderful, highly regarded brushes. But as far as American made, the Silver Grand Prix are really, really fine brushes. And it is a bristle brush. I use a filbert brush for this kind of thing when I absolutely have to. So as a last resort, I will use a filbert, and I may even do that in just a minute, but only as a last resort, and as much as possible, stick with, that eye has gotten too big. I had to figure out why. As much as possible, stick with bristles, and you can buy, like the one I just showed you is a number 0. And it can be brought, especially when it's new, it can be brought to a very, very fine point. Not point. I mean point in the sense of like a knife has a sharp edge. It can be brought to a sharp edge, not a sharp point. Okay. And the bristle brush, forgive me again, I know I'm in your way. Sometimes I can either paint or broadcast, and sometimes I can't do both. I'm trying to get out of your way as much as possible. This is another one of the, I've done so many of these. By the way, I counted up just the other night, since coronavirus crisis, quarantine more or less hit a couple months ago, I've done now 25 portraits, including 2 dogs, so 23 portraits, several other house portraits, but 23 literal people portraits, and that's a pretty good number in that amount of time. And I have, at the moment, I have a couple more in the lineup waiting for me to get to. So I'm very thankful for all the practice that I've been able to have during this crazy season. Oh, and I started to say, this is another flash photograph. And the first time, years ago, the first time that I did this super cheap portrait thing, at one point I said, no flash photography in my marketing. And then quickly discovered that the normal human being does not know, recognize, realize, understand, doesn't know what a flash photograph is. Ordinary people don't even know. So I learned that. It's like, what? You don't know what a flash photograph is? You can't tell by looking at a photograph whether it's flash? And what I got back was blank stares, like, no. It was another one of those cases where I have been me my whole life, and you've been you your whole life, and sometimes we're more different than we realize. So it turns out a lot of people, and it may be you, whoever's watching. Anyway, the reason it, first of all, generally speaking, doing a painting from a flash photograph is not cool. So I don't get any cool points for doing it. But of course that's not my purpose, so it doesn't matter. The real issue is when you paint from a flash photo, when you're painting, the issue as far as painting it goes, is that all the rules, all the normal rules, that word sounds weird in my ear, rules, all the normal guidelines for light and shadow, light and dark, shadow, play of light on the face and the body, is completely out the window. Like, for instance, normally you would think, here's a nose. Mine's not quite that big, but here's a nose. And underneath the nose is a shadow, right? That's normal. And if you're not careful, when you're painting from a flash photograph, again, all that's out of the window. And so you have to be careful not to paint out of your head. Yeah, let me show you what I mean. I'll look at her nose in particular. Can you see that? Hang on, I'll get it here in a second. There. The bottom of her nose is dark, but not only is there no shadow under her nose, immediately under her nose is a boom highlight. It's like, that just messes with your head when you're painting, because, and everything else. Anyway, it's horrible, but I'll do it for money. And here's the good news. If 90%, no, let's say if 80% of the population, 75% of the population doesn't know, cannot discern, doesn't see flash photography, they don't know, it's like, what are you talking about? I'm sorry, I hate to have such a mocking tone in my voice. It just comes out sometimes. I'm a nice guy, except when I'm not. If they don't savvy a flash photograph, then they clearly are not going to savvy a painting done from a flash. Do you understand? So it's like, doesn't matter to the client because they like the photograph. I'm not picking on this client at all, but just people in general. But anyway, just a word to you artists, you really have to stay on your toes, because I will intuitively do a shadow, under the eyebrows or under the bottom lip or under the cheeks or whatever. And with flash, all of that is out the window. So you really have to stay on your toes and keep painting what you see, not what you think you see. There, I could have just said that at the very beginning and be done with it. What? And this the chance for another rant? Uncle, 2 questions, 2 answers. I guess you didn't get my community post, Uncle. Yeah. I finished, well, actually the job has been enlarged, so that's good. But I finished the mural, and it's on my, I think, are you on an iPad or something? There was something about, on the iPad, there's no such thing as a community tab in YouTube or something like that. Weird. I'm not sure I'm remembering that right. But anyway, yeah, I posted that image last week when I finished the job, at least finished part 1 of the job. I enjoyed it very much. I was quite happy with it. They seemed to be quite happy with it. And I'm glad that they in fact, enlarged the job. So I'm going to do one more 8.5-foot wall section. So that's good news, because I'll get paid for it. So that's always good news. All right, now back to my Superman. That should be Stupid Man glasses. So I need to add some to her nose over here. Okay, so I've got dark stuff on my brush. Is there any place else? Let's make sure this part of her eye is going down, not up. Shadow under her teeth. Anyway, so when you're painting from a flash, oh, and Uncle asked a good question, floodlight flash is different. Yes, well, forgive me. When I'm talking about flash, I'm talking about the typical camera-mounted, straight, front-on flash. That's what messes everything up. And again, the good news is, so to speak, if there's good news, is that if a generous portion of the population doesn't recognize flash photography, then neither will they recognize or object to a painting done from flash photography. So, and instead I just get a really good workout exercise. All right, I've put some pale light paint on my brushes, and I want to capture some of the fine details of light. It's really reflection. Reflection is the word. It's not lighting on her face, it's reflection. And again, that's one of the problems with flash photography. It's very harsh lighting. Anyway, I think this is probably, I can't prove it, of course. Maybe if my client ever sees this video, he or she can instruct me. By the way, all right, little teaching moment. There's a piece of something on her face right here. A pile of paint, a bump of paint, or it might be a bump of the canvas. Good, I don't think it was. I think it was paint. So I try to always have a rounded X-Acto knife. I need to change that one. It's getting dull. Never try to catch a falling X-Acto knife. Just freeze. Wait till it stops tumbling. Even if it lands on your foot, you don't want to try to catch it, because instead of stopping it, you'll push it into your foot. How do I know these things? I guess. How do I learn these things? Anyway, so there's a trick. Keep a rounded. Straight will not do, because straight will gouge into your paint. So you do not want that. If I end up doing, it looks like I am going to end up doing enough work on her face today that I will repeat the process that I started today with, which is transparent glaze on top of the work that because right now, of course, because I'm doing light highlights, I'm working in opaque or translucent, to be more technically correct. It's not literally opaque, but fairly opaque paint applied thinly. So if I have a lot of that on her face, which it looks, right now it looks like that's going to be the case, then that means tomorrow, or whenever I come back to the painting, probably tomorrow, I will repeat that glaze thing that I started out today with. I find for myself, you just can't match the control, first of all, and the warmth. Transparent paints just look more alive than opaque. Opaque is dead. And of course, that's in keeping with how our skin actually works, so to speak. Our skin has the colors that it does. Colors, that's plural. Our skin has the colors that it has because, in fact, it is translucent. When we see human flesh, human skin, we are in fact seeing several layers of tones come together. And so to paint in that same, with that same mindset, to me, just makes like duh sense. Of course you're going to paint in layers of color, because that's what gives your skin its color. As you may know, if you're a regular, or if you're new, I've said often, if you want to have one category to slam Dan Nelson into, what category do I fit in? Then the word would be transparent. It would be appropriate to say, oh yeah, he's that guy that paints in layers and layers and layers of transparent color. That guilty, correct. That's me. That is me. And in that regard, I paint pretty much like all the great masters you've ever heard of or ever seen before approximately 1890. Before that time, everybody painted the way I'm painting, which is layers and layers and layers of transparent color. And that's how they achieved the warmth and depth and color that they did. That was largely lost in the 20th century for reasons that I won't go into right now. It's another rant for another time. I take my crazy glasses off and take a look at that. I am playing dangerously here. I'm making some very slight changes actually to Darcy is her name. I remember when Darcy was born, 1981 or 2, something like that. And this is her wedding, one of her wedding photographs from 20 years ago. And this is to be a gift to her from her parents or old friends of mine. Isn't that fun? So an anniversary gift for her 20th anniversary. I was shocked when I heard she'd been married 20 years, but then I remembered that my daughter, who was born a couple years after Darcy, has been married 16 years. So I was like, oh, it was one of those old people moments, like, oh, like 20 years? And then I went, oh, of course it's been 20 years. My own daughter, who's younger than Darcy, has been married 16. Oh, time flies when you're having fun. I think time flies when you're not having fun too, but it doesn't quite have the same ring. Time flies when you're not having fun. Okay, so I was starting to say, I'm the transparent guy, and I love, and let me give you some good reasons to paint transparent. One is because much of what we see in the world and in life is in fact transparent or made up of transparent colors. When I say transparent, sometimes I mean translucent, but not opaque. Okay, and water, for instance, if you're doing a landscape. I just talked to someone just the other day, and she was an artist, and she was complaining about, I don't like to paint water. I have a hard time painting water, or something like that. And I went, oh, you poor dear. Here, come and let me show you how to paint water. I don't know when's the last time I painted water in a broadcast, but it's been several times. Several times that has happened. My point being, the best way to paint water is the way water. Why does water look the way it looks? The answer is because it is made up of layers and layers and layers of transparent and translucent color. Right? You got that? So, by the way, her teeth are horribly red right at the moment. I don't know if you can see that or not. But that's just because I couldn't make my brush any smaller without going to a filbert, which I might do here in a minute. First, I'm just going to try to lift off some of that red. I was putting red onto her lips, and it spilled over into her teeth, and I just didn't worry about it. Here's a rubber-tipped paint mover. It's actually from the clay carving department in your art store. It's called the clay shaper, and it's a medium hard rubber point, and it's good for doing what I just did, just for moving paint around. So I just used that to get the spillover that got on her face, to get that off. All right, so I don't need to paint her teeth at all, at least not at the moment. I might come back and do that later. But let's stick with flesh tone issues for the moment. So how to paint water. Let me give you a list of things that are best painted by applying layer upon layer upon layer of transparent and translucent paint. Okay. 1, water. 2, sky. Why does sky look the way it looks? Why does it have the colors it has? The reason is because sky is in fact layer upon layer upon layer of various colors. So water, same thing. Water, sky, and flesh tone. Those three right there is, I could just stop right there. That's enough. But there are others. How about, let's go over to still life. Glass. In fact, let me give you one of my, it's not quite a rant, but it's a, pretty much anytime somebody brings a still life to our monthly painters gathering, which is, of course has not been monthly in the last couple of months, they bring a still life that includes some glass. I will often say, you know, go, in fact, do this before you start your painting. Go to the museum if you can, but at least look online. Google, look up Dutch still life paintings. In fact, you can probably do Dutch still life glass, and Google will probably give you hundreds, or at least scores of images of the old Dutch painters. The idea being nobody painted glass like the old Dutch still life masters. That may be an exaggeration. But until you find somebody better, go to them. So, what's my list? Water, sky, flesh tone, glass. Oh, flowers. Let's stay right there in the still life genre for a minute. Flowers. Why do flower petals have the color that they have? The reason is the color that you see is the buildup, the product of several layers, in this case of translucent color. So my point being, paint stuff the way stuff is actually made, and you'll find it easier to paint. In fact, I have an example of that right here. I just realized. One of the paintings that I finished in the last couple of weeks, and I posted it. I posted both of these on my community page on my YouTube channel. But I'll show you them to you. In fact, I'm going to pick you up off your perch here for a minute. These are freshly freshly varnished, so they're very wet. Anyway, this is a little lily, as you can see. And at the moment, well, no, I want to point all kinds of things to you. So I'm going to hang on. I'm going to pick you up. Forgive me while I give you a wild ride. But I really want you to be able to see this darling little face up close. I'm looking at my monitor here, and sorry about that shadow. Trying to avoid the glare. And the monitor is really not doing justice, in my opinion, to the real painting. It's in my monitor, it's too red. On the other one, it's too yellow. So who knows? But anyway, there, lovely face. How do you achieve this kind of facial color? What am I talking about? Finish with layers of transparent glazes. Okay, but the other thing I wanted to point out was this water. This is, does that or does that not look like thin layer of water over sand at the beach? And the answer is absolutely. It's a dead ringer for that water. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. So there's the photograph. And it was more than simply, I did match color, using Michael Carder with a D, Michael Carter's color matching trick on the plastic. I did do that. But beyond that, I did translucent and transparent glazes, and that looks so much like water. Then let me go for a minute. Then same thing with the sky. The sky is transparent layers. And here's Lily's brother. They're actually twins. And again, as I was painting this, I actually thought, whoops, my heart went out to how many artists would not know how to paint this thin layer of water on top of sand. It's a lavender, purple, blue color, periwinkle blue color, the water on the sand, but most easily achieved through translucent and transparent layers. Got it? So that's the point I'm trying to make here today with all this, is many times, if you want to be a good realistic painter, so in that regard, I think that I part company with Mark Carter. Who am I to argue with, a big dog painter? Well, the thing is, it's not me versus Mark Carter. It's Mark Carter versus Rembrandt and every other great painter that painted before 1890. Do you understand? So I'm not some kind of Lone Ranger genius. Sorry, I didn't mean that to sound like I'm calling myself. That's not the point. I'm not some kind of outlier in this regard. I'm in line with centuries, literally centuries of good painting, but that and literally centuries of transparent painting. That practice was largely lost in the 20th century. Again, I could give you the history, but I don't want to right now. I'm too tired to get into that rant in particular. All right, so let's continue with my list of things that should be painted utilizing transparent paint instead of opaque. Okay, not in the same order necessarily. Flesh tone, water, sky, glass, flowers, more particularly layers of translucent when it comes to flowers. Now, all you watercolor people, you paint in transparent layers all the time, so you don't have to pay any attention to this. This is the beauty of watercolor. It's transparent. All right, I'm gonna call her done for the moment. Well, before I do, let's work some on her dress. Hello, light blue. It is Dan, finally. Boy, I tell you, my friends, that is by far the longest hiatus. I started Daily Art Adventures on January 1st, as a matter of fact. On January 1st of 2017, and the last 3 weeks was the longest hiatus I've had. Nothing bad. I was doing one job on location, and the client was not comfortable with me broadcasting, so I wanted the money more than I wanted the broadcasting. That's me being funny. So of course I yielded to their wishes and did not broadcast. And then last week, it was just one thing after another that kept me from broadcasting. So it's good to be back. Certainly try not to do that three-week hiatus too often. Did I finish my list? I'm sure I didn't. I'll think of other things. Other things that should be, objects that should be painted. Of course, I think everything should be painted with transparent. You understand? So in a way, it's not fair for me to say give this list, because I think everything should be painted. But there are several things that, again, my heart goes out to many times. Early journey painters. And I say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that with opaque paint. I do need to paint her teeth now. That means I have to put my stupid man, as opposed to Superman, my stupid man glasses on again. You do what you need to do to get the job done, don't you? Well, let's leave talking about transparent things. Let's talk about how to paint white things, shall we? This is similar. In fact, I did a painting several months ago. You can look it up in my community page. It was called something. It had the word plain vanilla in it. Plain vanilla ice cream plant. That is to say, like a factory, like a processing, like a dairy process. And it was a painting of a ice cream processing plant. But the cute part of that was that it was a white building, white sidewalk, white car, and white clouds. Everything in the photograph was white. So in a way, it was a clinic on how to paint white stuff. And if you want to see more about how to paint white stuff, then just go back and watch several videos. Again, the easiest way to find that would be to find that painting. It'll be easy to see. It's a very industrial looking subject matter. But so here we are again. I love painting white stuff. And even though what I'm going to say is sort of belied by what I'm doing right now, trust me, if you're an early journey painter, pose the question, how do you paint white stuff? And the answer is by not using white paint. Okay, now let me qualify that, because what you see me doing now is using almost straight up titanium white. Uh-oh, is that my wife? No, good. Kansas is calling me, isn't that nice? Sarcasm. How do you paint white things for beginners? And the answer is by painting in any color but white. Kind of like, for God's sake, don't use white, is sort of the short version of this speech. But let me get more precise. The way you paint white things is by laying down, surprise, layer upon layer upon layer of different and various colors underneath, and then finishing just the final top, 20, by the way, this is the biggest concentration of white in the whole painting is going to be right there. Let me show you the photograph again, by the way, because this can be instructive. Here's this. I think probably not the professional photographer. I might be wrong. Maybe it was the professional that did this. But again, horrible, forgive me. I hope my client's not listening right now. Lovely painting, lovely subject matter. But from a photographer's point of view, this would not win any prizes in the local photography competition. Do you understand? For a number of reasons, but not the least of which is the front-on flash has created just this blinding, and I've already edited this, I've already darkened this dress down in Photoshop and lightened everything else. So the real photograph was even more extreme than this. And as you can see, I am not going to do the painting that way, right? I hope you'll agree with me that this is vastly superior, and I'm not done yet, but it's going to be boom, right there, and then fade darker, 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 unlike the photograph. Yeah, so let me turn this photograph back around. So how do you paint white objects? The answer is by building up layer upon layer. And I'm saying sarcastically, oh, there's a surprise. Dan Nelson recommends painting layers, right? So again, if you want one pigeonhole to pigeonhole me in, if you want one pigeon to hole me in, it would be, oh yeah, he's that guy that paints layers and layers of transparent color. Bingo, All right. So when you're painting something white, you do all different colors, depending on the subject matter and so forth, but not white. And then only the final touch. And by the way, may very well not be the final touch, because there's a very good possibility that tomorrow, when this is all dry, you understand, don't you, that I'm an oil painter, but this will all be dry tomorrow because two reasons. One, I'm using titanium. I'm looking for my tube of white paint. Huh, that's funny. Okay, Alkyd white. Oh, here it is. Fell down in the wrong hole. Alkyd, do you see that word right there? Alkyd, that means fast dry. That's not what it means, but that's the significance of it, okay? In southern Slovenian, the word Alkyd means fast dry. So if you happen to be from southern Slovenia, anyway, I'm being silly. God forbid I'm being silly. All right, so that's why it's going to be dry, and because I also use liquid. I have a better bottle of it over here somewhere. Here we go. Okay, so that's why all of my painting today will be completely dry tomorrow. There you go. You don't have to paint like me, but if you be easy on, if you want to be nice to yourself, you paint like me, please. Point is, all this will be dry tomorrow, so I will probably do yet another surprise transparent glaze on top of this white. And then we'll do yet one more, if not two more, layers of white highlight on top of that, all right? So are you getting the message? You don't have to paint like me, of course. You don't have to paint like me, Rembrandt, Rubens, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Boucher, Fragonard, Gainsborough. You do not have to paint like any of us. I'm being nasty now. You don't have to paint like us great masters. You can paint like your own 20th century self, flat, straight out of the, no, I have really dear friends who paint straight out of the tube. And there are other great painters like, well, Kevin McPherson, I think, and Richard Schmid. Richard Schmid definitely, he strongly advocates painting without medium, straight out of the tube. And who am I? No. Am I as good as those guys? No, of course not. But would they be better if they painted like Rembrandt? Yeah, they would. All right, and I'm not even going to try to defend that statement. Do you understand? But you catch my drift. Am I as good as Schmid? No. Kevin McPherson? No. But would they paint better if they painted more like Rembrandt? Yeah, that's sort of what I'm saying, okay? And again, that's a statement I am not going to defend because I'm just kind of blowing smoke. But I'm doing it to make a point as a teacher. Okay, if you want to paint good, I'm messing with you English majors here. If you want to paint good, paint like the old masters. And again, there was a very particular reason we lost the magic of transparency. There was a very blow by blow, step by step, play by play reason that we abandoned transparent painting in the 20th century. And I actually affirmed the history, the journey. But now that the journey is over, thank you, Clement Greenberg, we know that the canvas is flat. We do, we really do. I embrace that deeply, enthusiastically. Now that we've learned that lesson, we can go back to beautiful painting. All right. And I just hinted at a whole boatload of history and philosophy that I'm not going to follow up on right now, I don't think. Unless it starts coming out accidentally. All right. A lot of people are leaving some good chats over here. Light blue, what are my thoughts about using psychedelics while I paint? I'm not sure what that means. You mean psychedelic drugs? Oh my goodness. Are you kidding? Oh my goodness. That's funny. I don't know which way to respond. I'm going to respond like a smartass. Are you kidding? And mess with this incredibly finely tuned, most amazing thing in the entire cosmos, the human brain? Not a chance. I mean, I'll drink one glass of wine. If my head starts getting a little swimmy, I say, that's enough of that. I don't. But of course, as one dear wise friend of mine said, well, Dan, that's because you like reality. And I do indeed. I like reality very, very much. In fact, so much so that anytime I find myself grumping or grousing or not feeling particularly thrilled about reality, I realize that in fact it's because I've accidentally gotten shallow in my thinking and I need to go back to deep in my thinking. Aye, that opens up a whole can of worms, doesn't it? A can of gummy worms or something else delicious. Yeah, I'm one of those weird people in early 20th century Western civilization who actually believes in transcendent good. I don't insist that you believe what I do, but if you wanted to be happy, you would believe what I believe. Anyway, no, psychedelic, oh my goodness, that's funny. Let us know how it goes for you, Light Blue. I mean, listen, I'm a child of the 60s, right? I mean, I was there. I was there when Timothy Leary and the whole gang were, you know, whatever, Dropout, the whole drug thing, and they were stoned out of their mind and telling us it was opening up. I do believe, okay, so since you provoked me to this degree, I do believe that it is possible that by dropping any kind of drugs into your brain, you do in fact open yourself up to spiritual realities that are inaccessible to you when your brain is whole. But those spiritual realities are dark spiritual realities. Now you know now you think, man, this guy's I thought he was a smart guy. Turns out he's a medieval mystic. Well, not hardly, whatever. But yeah, it turns out you're tapping into dark spirits who can mess with your head, literally. And I have no need, because I tap into light spirit of light, if you will. My whole life and existence is testimony, in fact. Testament, I mean, that's what the sense of the word. Testament to the efficaciousness of the light spirit into which I dive deep. I keep threatening that one of these days I'm going to take you guys with me for one of my music outings. I actually played my music. Why did I suddenly start talking about music? Well, because I was talking about my whole being, my history, my biography, and even to some degree the skills that I hold in my hands are a product of my delving into the spirit of light, and have been blessed to be a rather talented little fellow. Anyway, music, art, in fact, is not the core of my being. Art is just something that I do. Try to do it well, but it's just something I do. And music is something else that I do. Anyway, I played last Sunday on our main street in downtown Raleigh. I have crazy equipment for playing outdoors. What do I play? Some of you say. Well, okay, the joke is, when I'm set up to play, I'm surrounded by 50 instruments. Now that is literally true, but deceptive. I am surrounded. I do, in fact, have 50 instruments around me, maybe more. But I essentially play 4 or 5 instruments, like one of which is guitar. So I have, 4 different guitars plus a ukulele there. And one of the guitars through a synthesizer can be played as a bass, and so on and so on and so forth. I play trumpet, so I have a trumpet and a flugelhorn, sometimes a shofar. I play flutes and whistles, so I have 20 of those, and I play harmonica, so I have 18 of those, and I play saxophone. I only have 1 of those, but I sure would love more. I would love to play oboe, by the way, and I'd love to play cello. Those are on my bucket list. Learn how to play cello and oboe. But anyway, and I actually set up my camera. I did everything except push the go button. So one of these days, some of you can join me in my musical adventures. I was on the main street in downtown Raleigh, North Carolina, which probably, like if you're in America, like your main street, probably, tragically, every window on our main street was broken. And I was there to shift the atmosphere. Now, I had a lot of help. Turns out there were a lot of good people. Hundreds, possibly thousands of people were downtown at the same time cleaning up the carnage. I have much to say about that whole subject as well, but don't know that I want to get into it at the moment. Come on, let's do some two-handed painting here. Hey, can I point out something? Do you see that mark that I just made right there? And then even these down here. I'm not sure they're going to stay in the painting. Let me put it this way. I'm not sure they're going to stay quite to that degree. In fact, I might just go like this and say, okay, now they're going to stay that much. Just for what it's worth, if you were watching a moment ago, you saw how I did that. I did it with 2 hands because I'm freer. My spirit, my psyche, my subconscious is freer to paint more freely when I use 2 hands than when I use 1 hand. When I use 1 hand, it's as if my brain is able to keep up with what 1 hand is doing, but my brain is not able to keep up with what 2 hands are doing quickly. And so I end up making more, I think I did right there, more hand-ish, hand-ish marks instead of brain-ish marks. Does that make sense? I've never used that terminology before. That's a good one, though. When I paint fast with 2 hands, I am freed up to make more hand-ish marks as opposed to brain-ish or mind-ish marks. Now, this is a bit of an exaggeration, but another way to say that is when I paint with 2 hands, I'm a little more likely to paint like John Singer Sargent. Okay. I use him often as a foil, as a comparison, so to speak, to myself. I ain't no John Singer Sargent. Wish I were, wish I was, wish I could, but I'm inching my way in that direction little by little. That's the good news. All right, you're getting a terrible glare. Let me do that for a second. So, yeah, that's actually a little bit better. So you can see the overall composition of the painting. Do you see how much better this is than that? Here, this is just as white. In fact, the highlight on her toe of her shoe is just as white as the highlight on her bodice, on her shoulder, whiter than her teeth, and that's ridiculous, right? What other questions? Light blue. Have you done? Have you dropped acid or whatever? I'm sorry for laughing because I'm not taking it very seriously, am I? I am not. No. And I'll freak you out some more if you want. I feel like I have portals into alternate forms of reality already in my life, and they're working very well for me. All right, let's change gears considerably here. Let's do some work on her bridal bouquet. I just finished a painting, my first ever close-up painting of a bridal bouquet. Just finished it yesterday. That also is on my community page if you want to see a picture of it. It's also on my Fine Art America. You can buy a print of it if you want. Anyway, first time that I can think of that I did a painting, close-up painting of just a bridal bouquet. That was kind of fun. So it was essentially, of course, a still life, which is unusual for me. You guys still facing the right way? Okay, I'm looking at the photograph quite a bit. I'm going to do some of the dark stuff in here. Switching to a lighter and slightly more opaque green. I'll come back to the dark stuff in a minute. Once again, being careful not to be too careful, right? Don't color in the lines most of the time, unless you're doing details on a small portrait on the face, right? Then you have no choice. Then yes, you have to do some tongue painting. So it goes without saying then, doesn't it, that my portraits are a mixture, and this is not, I'm by no means unusual in this regard. My portraits are a mixture of fairly tight realism and looser, don't like that term, but more energetic brushstrokes, right? More impressionistic, and don't like that term either. Simply because too many people, when you say impressionistic, they get confused with impressionism, and I have no desire to to go down the road of Impressionism, even though I respect it and like it. My painting is not Impressionism. Anyway, so that's why I don't usually. So abstract realism. The face is realism, and the rest of the painting is quite abstract. And I am, again, by no means just pointing out that that's what's going on here. And certainly not unique in that regard. Many portrait painters would fit that description. The face is real, tight, accurate. The rest, everything else is abstract realism. Maybe I should put the emphasis on abstract realism. There we go. David Leffel. At least that's where I first heard that term several years ago. He's a big dog painter up in the Northeast somewhere. You can Google him. He does a lot of good teaching online, but not for free. He's the one, he calls his painting abstract realism. And several years ago when I heard that, I realized, oh, that's the perfect description for my style of painting as well. Not counting the faces, of course. So abstract realism means that, first of all, my paintings are definitely realism, right? Quite easy to identify the subject, so they're realistic in that regard. But what it turns out, I've learned that the 19th century artists called it the decorative element. They called the realism the illustrative, and the line, shape, design, value, texture, so forth. They call that the decorative. Now that the word decorative has been hijacked by another school of artistic thought, and so you could not use the word decorative unless you explain it. But anyway, what I'm calling abstract is what many of the 19th century painters called decorative. Another way to put it would be to call it simply the visual, purely visual. And by that I mean not what is it a picture of. I usually like to, for some reason, just to be ornery, I mispronounce the word picture. It's not what it's a picture of. That is the illustrative element. Again, using 19th century terms. Of course, we've talked about that kind of thing quite a bit, not the least of which is, I say, that the ideal art journey is to spend the first half of your art journey, the first period of your art journey, learning the illustrative, learning how to paint stuff that looks like stuff. And then many of us, I believe, graduate to a higher level. And I am not alone in this. It was the very same 19th century painters that were after the same objective, and they called it the decorative element. And again, by that they meant what I would call the abstract visual elements. And of course, every time I say anything about the superiority of the abstract realism, then of course I always have my friendly ghosts in my ear. Many of my friends who are either very realists or hyper realists or super, and some of whom are famouser than me, more expensive than me, more richer than me, more award-winning than I. I'm messing with you English majors again. I just do that to provoke you, you know that? So don't get triggered, I'm just doing it on purpose to be mean. And I have no complaint. It's very possible that somebody else was put on the planet to fulfill a different destiny than myself. And I could say that whether I believe in transcendent realities or not. You can just take it at various degrees of literalness. Anyway, so aha. There, that flower, that bouquet needed a smear right there. And 2 or 3 smears. All right, now I've been postponing the inevitable, and that is fixing his face. And unfortunately, I don't know what his name is. I know her. I remember when she was born, but I wasn't there when she got married. So anyway, Darcy's husband. And I think I'm going to end this broadcast right here. I've done plenty of talking for one day. I hope to be back, not have a 3-week hiatus. I am very unlikely to have a 3-week hiatus since it's only happened once in 3 years. So hopefully it won't happen again real soon. But anyway, I'm going to, if I find myself stuck, by the way, I will, maybe I already have it here somewhere. I will go upstairs to my computer. Yeah, here it is. Oh yeah, and I've already done it. So what I did is I painted first, off the cuff, no photomechanical tricks, okay? Then after all the size was determined, then on my computer, I printed out this image that's the same size. So see, can you see that this will help me capture likeness better than this? Because this is about 20% bigger than the painting. So I'll just mention that, and then I'll bid you all a fond adieu. If I start doing something really interesting this afternoon, I'll do another broadcast. But I'm not promising, and it's already 1 o'clock. Today is my wife's birthday, by the way. Nancy's 64th birthday. I'm 66, she's 64. We're very happily married, just past 40 years. I wish you all could have what I have, but you can't. No. That was mean, wasn't it? All those of you who don't have happy marriages. Anyway, and that was just plain mean right there. All right, let's see somebody saying something down here. Michael, where have I been? I think I did maybe you already heard. I did a mural in a business for 2 weeks, nearly 2 weeks, and they didn't want me to broadcast. So that knocked me out for a week, and then 2 weeks, and then last week I would just one thing and another came up. Aha, Michael, I've been asked to teach some portraiture drawing at my local art club. Oh, any tips? Yeah, watch all my videos. Yeah, too much to say. The answer is sketch. Practice drawing. Hello, Adeolu. You are correct. You're exactly right. You're putting it very accurately. Thank you, Michael, for happy birthday to Nancy. Appreciate that. So the reason I mention that is because we're taking a little trip out of town to celebrate her birthday. All right. So since Michael, was it Michael who brought up the question about teaching? Okay, I'll do a little bit. The skills necessary for doing good human rendering. 2 separate and distinct skills, never to be confused. One is the power of observation. Look, copy, look, draw, look, copy. That's what you've seen me doing with the photographs in the last couple hours, hour and a half, whatever it's been. The other is separate and distinct from that, and you must do both. On one hand, you must do, like I said, look and copy. On the other hand, you must do book learning. That is, you must, and this is my, I'm teaching a class in anatomy in a couple months, for a couple months, like 13 weeks. And so I'm brushing up. I'm just going to bring you back to pages upon pages upon pages of learning, mostly learning from other people. You know, here, legs, exaggerated tendons and muscles, legs, analysis, mechanical, word pictures, tricks, ways, things to remember, tricks to remember. So when it comes to drawing a face, you have to do the same thing. So this is body, of course. But you have to do the same thing with regard to noses, eyes, mouths, chins. Anyway, so this is what I call book learning. This is me. This is all work I've done basically since coronavirus started. There is, I hate to say, there is no shortcut. You have to do the work. Yeah, by the way, this is the sketch I did in preparation for that bride. Do you see her in the same pose? I'm getting a lot of this from Pinterest. So other artists have put online, you know, different ways to remember things, the different muscles and so forth, labeling all the muscles, and so forth. Is that the last page? Yeah, so that's the last page right there. Woman, front and back. I almost made some funny comment about, you know, pretty face, mildly come hither look, young, pouty lips. I'm being silly. It's just so funny. We are so hardwired to look into the eyes, and well, as males, then we're also hardwired to look into other things. You know that, but you know that if you're a married or happily married woman, or even if you're not. But anyway, homework, and this is a sketchbook. So if you want to teach people how to get good at portraits, their number one friend, their number one task is notebook. And what do they fill the notebook with? Observation, looking and drawing, and as I said, I call it book work, book learning. You know, getting one of the books that teaches you how to draw a face and so forth. Anyway, both things need to be done. All right, with that, I'm going to leave. Thank you, Ade Olu. Did I say your name right? Ade Olu, but I bet it's Ade. I'm just guessing. I'm about to hang up, so I probably won't give you time to answer me. But if you answer, I'll get it next time I come on. Thanks, y'all. It's been great fun having you, being back on board finally. Whew. And I look forward to our next broadcast. Hey, so good, Michael. Excellent. Bye-bye.